Good evening, I'm Adderall. Tonight on Talking in Stations, resource distribution update. It's a big one. Major mineral distribution changes will affect EVE industrialists at all levels. Asteroids are stratified and separated between high, low, and null security space. If you are looking for tritanium, the base material for almost all ships and modules in EVE, that is now exclusive to HiSec. Need Noxium or Isogen? You'll find those in low-sec. Everything else you'll find in null-sec. And wormholers, they don't get anything. They have gas and T3 materials. In other news, nothing happened in Ignoitin since Vili put bounties on mission runners. It's all quiet there. And Imperium loses a Tartara in YF TAC 6. We'll look at those stories and more on TIS Today, the EVE Online report. Let's get started. How's it going, Mannix?
Hey, it's doing great. We're also joined today by Caleb.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Nick Bison.
Good evening.
And Asarakan. Sorry, I probably butchered your name.
It's all good. Hey, good afternoon, everybody.
All right. We're going to start out today by giving you a quick update on what transpired. I just want to say that there was a dev blog that came out about the resource distribution update. It was followed by some talk that we had. We had an open house, open forum, and Talking in Stations for about an hour and 15 minutes. You can see that on our YouTube channel. Then CCP had their own stream with Caleb Carneros from TIS and the devs, and they talked about this for about an hour in front of a pretty active audience. And then after that was over, they kicked it back to Talking in Stations for a wrap-up of an hour and 15, no, it was an hour and a half actually, with some mining experts and some industrial experts as well from all over the map. So that's what happened today. And this is your wrap-up evening news. So let's get into this by first giving you some backdrop on what's going on here. And we'll start with the ecosystem outlook. This is phase 2. We've entered phase 2, the redistribution phase. Phase 1 was the shortage phase. Phase 2 is the redistribution phase, which is we're now entering. And then later, phase 3 will hit dynamic distribution phase. Caleb, you know these very well. What's going on with these ecosystem outlook changes?
Well, I think the interesting thing about this is, of course, that this is a grand plan to fix all those problems that's arisen in EVE over quite a lot of years. And this started with the introduction of the ecosystem team, right? Spearheaded by Ratati. And then we got some changes to market stuff. And then we got this big plan for resources, which also includes how these things are tied into other aspects of the game, which you can read if you actually read the original one. I think it was some very good ideas, and I liked the whole pipeline. And I was just wondering how come none of this had actually come further in the process, because we got that first hit, which was also quite dramatic and caused a lot of shenanigans and everywhere. And of course, we had Ratati and the crew of these changes on Talking in Stations and did quite a lot of interviews with them. I think they covered very well what the intention is, but still, it's still so shaded, right? Because of one of the topics that Matterall likes to point out. It's a problem if we give the players too much foreknowledge that they can act upon and actually prepare for everything. So it's being kept a little bit close this time, and this was the same with the first phase. First phase was to turn down all these faucets when it comes to minerals, because as we've talked about before, it's just been too easy to actually sit and take advantage of these faucets. And this is one of the discussions with Rorquals. But it doesn't help if you just nerf the ship. You kind of need to get to the source. Otherwise, it's not really going to help anything. And many of the things that CCP are intending to do in the future, which is also kind of in that plan, requires some steps that might be a little bit painful. I mentioned on today's show that I think it's really a little bit too much all at once, and I would have preferred to stagger these or make it a gradual process. But CCP has decided to do this in these 3 big jumps, and that's completely valid. And we're now entering the second phase, which is proper redistribution or making space valuable specifically for the types of space. And in the past, very old days, it was based on what quadrant you lived in. So which kind of empire space and the adjacent space, that decided what type of ore you had available. Now they're doing it based on space type. So high sec, low sec, wormhole, and null space. And each will have their unique thing that they specialize in. And of course, even though we said that wormholes are getting a little bit shafted, but they still have their specific item, which is Tech 3 stuff, right? And if we get a future tweak to Tech 3 in its utility, that stuff is going to be more valuable. So this is just a whole value redistribution system that they're thinking about. And we're still in the pain phase. So yes, it's going to hurt, but it's all with a good idea and intent.
Right. And that's what we saw today. A lot of pain, people complaining on, there was like 1,700 viewers watching the CCP stream. A lot of them were upset. We've seen a lot of people upset in Discord. There's no way to beat around the bush. People are feeling the pain. At the same time, these economic changes are incredibly potent. And so they need to be kept close to, or their cards close to their breasts. Is that how they say it? Chest? Because as we saw today, when they announced these changes, what happened to mineral prices?
They exploded.
Yeah, Noxium went through the roof. Isogen just jumped up to 50 ISK per item per unit, which it hasn't been there for about 4 years. So certain minerals, in fact, most minerals, all jumped up in price. Definitely asteroids did as well. One of the persons that was quick on their feet was Nick here. Can you tell us what you did this morning?
Yeah, sure. When I first happened to pop on fairly early, and Caleb had just posted the link of the redistribution side, and I started reading through it because what I build in my little high sec section, I go through a lot of Noxium, and that moving that to to low sec as an exclusive, I rapidly just took a look to see what kind of Pyrox was available in a compressed form. There was a bunch sitting over in Dodixie. I ran over and bought it all just to keep my production rolling.
And the price, do you know what the difference was when you bought and where it ended up at the end of the day?
Oh, yeah. Give me just a second. I think, let's see. Let me find a compressed side. Give me 1 second.
Sure, go ahead. So the point of this was that there were a lot of buying opportunities if you saw this information quickly, but it happened so fast that those buying opportunities are already gone in less than 24 hours. So if you're a week, you log in once a week, there's no chance for you to compete with these. So that's why CCP has to hide this information and make sure it doesn't leak to the CSM, and the CSM doesn't leak it to players, or I guess that's making the CSM sound bad, or players get hold of it, or heavy hinting happens because people can say, aha, I'm going to capitalize on this change in the mineral distribution.
Yeah, and with CCP and CSM, it's really one of those issues with negative action is still hinting at something, right? This is the whole I can neither confirm nor deny reply. And it's just a little bit dangerous to let the CSM have that knowledge, because it's difficult for them to not acting, sharing with their people what they're supposed to do. But I think another interesting fact that I took away from this, but exactly, they're humans, right? But one of the things that I think is funny is to see how many of the comments and reactions so much prove that this works, right? Maniscott just told us before we started the show that this is kind of interesting to him where he lives, because where he lives basically has a lot of benefit under this system, which other locations do not have. I don't know if you want to actually walk the audience through that, because I think it's really exciting to see how each little piece of space will adopt these changes in positive and negative ways.
Well, hold
Yeah,
on.
I could kind of.
Hold that thought for just a second. Sorry, Caleb. I want to finish this ecosystem and then go back to what the changes were, and then we'll talk about some of the effects. Let's do that. How about that? So the next phase is going to be dynamic distribution. We haven't seen that phase yet. We've entered what looks like the distribution phase, or maybe this is part of the shortage phase, right, Caleb? We were talking about, like, could it be shortage or could it be redistribution?
It's both. It's both, and they said that it's like the third stage of the shortage phase, but it's the first stage of the distribution phase.
Right.
So what should be coming out now is a little bit turning knobs, fixing things, and one of the big things is, of course, tied into some of the other things that I mentioned in the original post. So something about what tools are you actually using for these things, and things like is printing, bounties, other types of loot, and all that stuff. They're going to start reaching those aspects as well, because it's already mentioned there. So they will also play part of what I would call stage 2 and 3 of distribution. And then most likely we're going to see stage 1 of the dynamic stuff maybe come this winter already.
Mm-hmm.
I hope.
Probably, yeah. Okay. So later this year. Last question on this outlook for scarcity, I suppose. Why are they doing this?
Well,
To make each section unique again, and it'll force trade potentially, and force movement of people back and forth. And it's pretty much going to affect all layers, whether you're a big null block all the way down to a small producer. Everybody's going to have to look and redefine their own system.
Not their solar system, but their system of working.
Yeah, this
Correct.
is the opposite. Yeah. As McLeod pointed out, this is the opposite of what we had. We had self-sufficiency, where you could almost supply everything yourself locally and source everything. It was just a matter of how much effort you needed to make, right? That was a massive mistake. And Hilmer, when he came back just after the sale, basically started noticing that the faucets were all wrong. The whole self-sufficiency thing was a massive mistake. We need to go back to the point where we have balance of trade between areas, and where players are actually forced to interact with each other or spread out more. And I think all of this is just a good idea.
The sale is the sale of CCP to Pearl Abyss. Now, Asteros Khan, what's your take on why they're changing the ecosystem?
Kind of like what everybody else was just saying, is just eliminating the ability to be able to produce everything on your own. Because with that, your average high-sec corporation can pretty much do everything, a high-sec corporation can do, or a null-sec. So I feel like they did this to, eliminate the ability to do everything on your own, which I feel like this change will be able to benefit everybody, because you have to build bonds and relationships now at this point. You can't just do everything on your own, and that gives potentially even your solo miner a chance to be valuable in the long run.
If I can dogpile on what he said, and also one of the first things in the second sentence of CCP's release on this, and I'll paraphrase part of it, says key pillars of Eve is that loss has meaning, and that state we've reached where loss is not meaningful anymore. And that's true up and down the scale because of how much, how plentiful our resources and our abilities to produce are. So this turns down, what we can do. You really got to plot it out. And losing a ship right now, this, the already replaced, that's going to go on for a little longer. And that's going to start getting to where already replaced is not a thing, and it's going to hurt losing something.
It's already started, right? I think Carneros on the show pointed out that something like replacing an entire fleet of battleships is already not necessarily that easy anymore. So it's already going to actually affect the war. This also brings on, I think the timing is bad. I don't necessarily like that they did this now. But of course, it's going to cut into stockpile, so it's going to be working as intended.
Okay.
I just also like. I know that Manuel will smack me a little bit and say, "Remember when you had to eat your hat?" I didn't pay any attention to, say, the Triglavian invasion stuff because I said it was not newsworthy until suddenly it was. Now I actually have to pay attention to what everyone else is doing in Eve. I can't just sit there and say, I don't care what happens in Null. I don't care what happens in Wormholes. Because if we are all tied together in this interdependency, I have to care what happens to them because it's going to affect me in one way or another.
That's a good point. We're looking at a little graphic here that shows the healthy state of the economy is over on one side and the current state is over on the other. And so the idea is to get the income generation in a healthy state so that loss has meaning, as Nick was saying. I also thought there was something about botting in this, but maybe that's just one of the other things.
It's in the old one. It's in the cheating thing.
It's down at the very bottom.
Okay, that's another goal. Okay, well, let's go to the phase that we're seeing today. This was the big announcement today. The redistribution update for minerals. And here's the phase. I'll just read a little bit here and then we'll discuss it. Exclusive or main supplier of the tritanium mineral is going to be HiSec. Excluded from this region is isogen, noxium, zydrine, megasite, and morphite. Remember, these are the minerals that compose asteroids that are found in these areas. So you don't go into space and mine minerals. You go into space and mine asteroids. And then you take those asteroids and you refine them into these minerals. So asteroids containing tritanium are pretty much going to be in HiSec. So think of it that way. In low sec, which is dangerous space to mine because you don't have the benefit of your team securing you as well as nullsec does, but you also don't have the benefit of HiSec NPC law enforcement helping you out. You're right in the middle there. So this is a very dangerous area. That area is going to have isogen and noxium, but it's not going to have, these are excluded, tritanium, zydrine, megasite, and morphite. And finally, in nullsec, that's where you're going to find zydrine, megasite, and morphite. So all the asteroids in nullsec will have those, but they won't have tritanium, noxium, except for in anomalies. So there's a small exception there. In anomalies, there will still be some tritanium and noxium in those. In wormholers, they are the main supplier of no minerals. Tritanium, noxium, and morphite are excluded minerals from wormholes. So you may find trace elements of some minerals in some way, not sure. But they will have some gas, apparently, some extra gas, which is used for boosters. So that's what's going on as far as distribution. And then the DNA of each asteroid is going to change. And you'll just have to look at this chart because I'm not going to read all these stats, but some pretty big changes in here, right?
Yeah, some of them with the absolute removal of trit from some of the items, trit being obviously tritanium, and then reduction on a lot of items. So this is all definitely part of the scarcity that we've been seeing coming. And this one looks pretty rough. Going to be fun.
Yeah, like Arcanor loses 22,000 units of tritanium, completely zeroed out. Crocite, 21,000 units of tritanium, completely zeroed out. You will not find tritanium in those rocks anymore. Those asteroids don't have it. And the list goes on and on. Anything shocked you guys in here?
It's the harshness, the timing, and the all at once, and that there is no safety valve. There's no little leniency thing. It's most likely going to make the effect work faster and actually get to the healthy point where they can then put something back. It just feels a little bit very harsh. It's it's a very big pill to swallow.
Yeah, it's
It
not the.
definitely-
Go ahead.
Yeah, say definitely. It's definitely pulling that scab off quickly, but it's not exclusive to any region. It's by high, low, and null. So, and obviously wormhole folk. So everybody's affected. It's so you can't say region X is being targeted or treated unfairly. It's across the board, so it's going to affect everybody at the same time.
Well, that's one of the things about these changes. There's a lot of pain involved for people who have, certain interests in selling things and harvesting things and creating things. But when you think about it, no one's immune to these changes. Everybody's affected by them. So if you feel like this is going to slow you down, it's going to slow your neighbor down too. You just have to figure out how to mitigate being slowed down, make alternative plans, and this might give you a leg up on your competition.
Yeah, we do have to remember that you always have the option of getting some of these resources by, say, shooting rats and getting loot and salvage and actually shooting your neighbor. It's going to give you minerals too.
Absolutely, but
you can also refine, by the way.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, yeah, this change is gonna hurt a lot of industrialists and deep nullsec for sure. Just because the longer jump ranges they're gonna have to go through to get the minerals from high sec to deep null. So definitely it's going to affect every ship in the game, right? Every ship you would think price is going to increase. Hulls for every ship probably will go up substantially. Definitely going to be a huge change to the game.
You think substantially?
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at the process that's going on right now, that's going to filter down to the T1s, right? T1s are probably going to go up in price pretty substantially. A good percentage, probably 10, 15%, probably.
Now, the different size organizations will be able to either weather the storm or adapt at different paces. In a little tiny operation like mine, I'm probably going to, most of my making up my shortages is going to be through trade and markets. Somebody like Asteroid, who's got a much larger, medium-sized organization, and maybe you could speak to like how you plan on dealing with this.
Mostly via either mining in low-sec or trying to shuffle our needs via, moon ore. We could still get the Pyrite and Malexalon, and if anything, we can trade that in to get whatever we need. But really, I feel like it's not going to be that much of a drastic change because we already kind of mine in low-sec, and we already have a big mining base in high-sec as well.
Yeah, to that point, Caleb mentioned earlier the unique position that my home station's in. I'll fly for Rogue University, Rogue Consortium, and Wrecking Crew, and we live in Pravi. So we're uniquely positioned to have access to null, high sec, and low sec mining, and we do have operations in all three. So our organization, being positioned towards that, should actually do fairly well in this environment. So it makes you wonder if some of these regions like Pravi, Vel the Silent, that's closer to high sec and null sec, might be a little more sought after by some of these null sec entities.
And it brings on this is a fun topic that's related to what Manuscott just talked about. How you then distribute your infrastructure, right? Where do you put your Keepstars? Where do you put your Sotios? Where do you put these different entities? And where do you focus your industry? And where do you focus your markets? Where do you focus your staging? These things are not going to be the same in all regions of space. I'm seeing the obvious opportunity that potentially a lot of production will be done in low sec, right? If you can take an area and actually defend it enough, taking materials from high-sec into the low-sec area, right? The bulky stuff, and then produce it with taking in the easy to ship materials from elsewhere. That means that then when your stuff is done, like especially things like hulls, you basically just put your dudes in there, and then you just ship them all out into null where you need them.
There was two things that I kind of am excited to, see how it unfolds. How is Jita going to, survive now that not only are they cut off from a lot of these regions, and it's going to take a lot longer for a lot of these people who do the majority of mining to get there. Now, how are they going to be able to survive with the shortage of not having as much tritanium being imported? Because the benefit to Jita is you can import stuff and you can export stuff. What happens when you can't import about 100 bill in tritanium a day? Well, people are going to probably go elsewhere. And I'm interested to see if Amar now with this change can outcompete Jita, because more people are going to be able to obviously go there easier than getting to Jita. And then another thing too, with this low sec change, I'm also slightly interested to see if people start using NPC stations more, because one of the dangers of obviously building your own stations in low sec is the danger of getting dropped on by a bigger, capital fleet that can just take out your stations. Well, if you get the right enough standings with the NPCs in that area, you can use those facilities. So I wonder if people will do that or use those facilities and get the standings that they need so that they can possibly build up in those areas.
Right.
Well, basically what you're hinting at is the fact that now we have a really good incentive to have secondary, tertiary, and quaternary hubs, right? Each little area of high-sec will have a benefit from consolidating all those tritanium-based raw materials in that trade hub, and then it can then be distributed out from there, because Jita will lose its crown. That's pretty obvious.
Absolutely. And makes you wonder what organizations like Snuff or Shadow Cartel, is this going to bring them more content, as obviously more people are going to need to move to low sec to mine and to get these minerals that's only going to be found there.
Okay, a couple more parts of this announcement here. The asteroid belts themselves are actually going to be reduced, and this may be a reflection of what was pretty much announced as general guidelines, but if you look here, all variations of Omber and Kernite will be removed from high sec, as in low sec, all variations of Veldspar, Scordite, Plagioclase will be removed from low sec. So these reflect what we were talking about. These are the actual asteroids that are going to be moving out, leaving the minerals to be found elsewhere. But when I look at null security, the quantity and variations of Kernite reduced by 75%, Bistot 70%, Arcanor 50%, Mercoxit 90%. Are they also reducing the quantity of ore that's out there?
The availability, capacity-wise, is being reduced by these numbers.
So yes, it actually does look like that. 90% reduction in mercoxic, that's your sole source of morphite,
right?
Could drive T2 prices, when that shortage hits.
Yeah, morphite is only used in T2 modules and ships. Not much of it's used on each ship or module, but the modules eat up a lot. If you do a run of T2 10 damage control, you're going to lose 10 morphite.
Yeah, it definitely feels like they're stacking these phases. Like even though they're moving on to phase 2, the shortest phase 1 still applies, right?
Right, and this is interesting because if you're gonna, you can either have 10 morphite used on, say, 10 damage control units, or you can make 5 frigates, because it probably takes 2 morphite to make a T2 frigate. And so you start to wonder, like, what's my better bang for the buck? Should I build ships? Should I build modules? as a builder, you'll have to make those calculations. Like, where's my morphite that's really hard to come by? Where do I spend that? Okay, or anomalies. Those are interesting here because high-sec or anomalies will be removed, just gone. Low-sec security will have certain anomalies will be removed, but not all of them. The quantity of all variations of gneiss and dark ochre in low-sec will be increased by 300%. And if we look at the composition, I think that gives you the kind of minerals they want you to have in low-sec. And then the quantity of all variations of crocite in low-sec will be increased by 9,900%. That's a huge increase in low-sec. And if we want to be clear about this, let's go look at what crocite gives you. It's part of the ABCs. So it'll give you no tritanium, but it will give you a ton of pyrite. I think that's pyrite and maximum.
Noxium and zydrane for crocite.
Okay, thank you. Those are the minerals for that asteroid. So those are going up 9,900% in low-sec. And then it looks like the null-sec anomalies are not touched, apparently.
Which they were already nerfed previously, and you would think the removal of trit and the ore itself will still go over to the anomalies.
Yeah. So in K space, that's known space, the gas sites, the spawn will probably be Mikoser Osen. They're reduced, those sites, and so are the Cytosorcerin. I'm going to get away with that, reduced as well. But in W space, which is wormhole space, gas sites will be increased, including all fullerite quantities at all sites will be increased by 100%. Remember, gases are used to make boosters that pilots use to boost their skills temporarily. And ice sites, the spawn probability of all ice sites will decrease. And that's something that wasn't in the headlines, but that's a big deal because the byproducts of ice are fuels. And those fuels run the capital ships and some structures, and most structures. That is and can be a very big deal. I don't think I heard anybody talking about ice today.
I think we completely missed that earlier.
Yeah, it can be huge or it might not be. It depends on how much the probability of ice sites decreases. If they really turn that dial down, fuel prices can go really high because that stuff is used all the time.
Yeah, and that will affect the transport of the ore from null-sec to low-sec to high-sec and vice versa, right? So there'd be another increase to cost of just moving the minerals around that you now have to do.
To conceptualize that, if you own a jump freighter, you need ice derivatives like fuel, the isotopes from ice, and you need to use that to jump your jump freighter into the marketplace and jump it back, carrying it quantities back and forth to sell at the market or to buy at the market for what you need. And those fuel prices, as they go up, so does your margin shrink. All these calculations have to be made. So when you're trying to determine, should I move to null-sec to live there, to prosper, you got to make all these calculations about what that actually means. And the base of all those calculations is changing. Interesting time.
Definitely interesting. And that's why I think areas like Providence is going to be a lot more valuable just because of their location. We may see the larger null-sec alliances want to move away from the deep null pockets.
Okay, some closing notes.
Go ahead.
I
was going to say, other than Pravi, Tribute and Pureblind also are right there.
Yeah, those are all. I mean, all the bordering
sections. Yeah, I see what you're saying there.
So some closing notes from CCP, and then we'll get closing notes from all our guests here. As mentioned in the EVE Online Ecosystem Outlook blog from March, the goal for this update is the reduction of inventory. Alongside that, the following is expected: more movement in low sec, potentially more destruction, an increase in mining ship losses, more market transactions for ores and minerals, mineral income from refining items to increase. That's an interesting one. I'll come back to that. And prices of minerals to change. We've already seen the prices of minerals change. The interesting thing is the sources of minerals, asteroids, and harvesting those asteroids is also changing, and that's what we've talked about all day today. But what we didn't talk about is stuff that's already built with minerals. You can refine those and turn those into minerals and use those to recreate something else. So if you have a bunch of one thing, you can refine all those things down to minerals and use those minerals to build another. Even better, you can capture other people's stuff and refine it and make stuff that you actually need. So I think junk might actually be sold even for a little more than it's being sold for.
Yeah, currently it's more profitable for you to sell the modules and stuff that drop instead of refining, but that definitely could flip with this change.
Yeah. Okay.
This is why I've mentioned that this is reminiscent of gun mining. It's not going to be gun mining the same way, because I'm pretty sure the CCP doesn't want that. But you're going to see that as the valve that you can kind of access to get some access to the things that you don't have locally.
Yeah.
Hey,
So
I've got billions in loot right now, and I want to hold off and just see what the refined amount is going to be equal to instead of just selling it off right now. So that's going to be interesting.
So gun mining, for those who don't know, there was a time in the drone regions that hunting NPCs, or ratting as we call it, didn't give you a bounty prize, which is ISK. Instead, it gave you some, what were they, components? Basically some salvage.
Alloys.
Yeah.
Alloys was the primary thing, right? And
Right.
they still exist. They haven't been removed from the game. So again, this is another alternative where you can add those as drops in special circumstances. So special rats, whatever. There's many ways that they can turn some of these knobs back up.
Hold on. Let me just make the point that you could take those alloys and refine them into minerals and go on with that. So they still exist in the game.
Yeah, they haven't been removed at all, and it's really just putting them back in the loot table, and then you have some way to actually get some of the things that you are usually short of in the space that you live. So I think we're going to see something like this. This is the real small things that they can do in increments. And then my personal take is, I think they're going to add minerals back, but they're going to do it on moon mining, because then it's me, my platform, my control, and my skin in the game. That means I can get killed. That means the node needs to be restarted, right? This is the genius of moon mining that never got to fruition because it was launched when Anomalies was king.
They also may put those alloys as loot drops on any number of NPCs. So you may see as a part of it, we get wreckage now. We may actually see some alloys as well. So who knows? They can always put minerals into the, let's say, bloodstream of the game at all levels through different methods, loot table, moon mining, or that sort of thing. So whatever you can't get, or whatever shortages you're missing out on in mining, you might be able to recover a little bit of that in other ways. That's possible. We don't know.
Yeah, but
just to remember, us having this war right now is really good for all of these things, because it means that I think CCP will be motivated to actually maybe push up the date, because we are depleting those stockpiles. That means that it is really good for them to put some of that resource stuff back in the game, but put it back so it actually works and doesn't break the ecosystem. So I would be perfectly fine predicting that it might actually come before Christmas, our dynamic phase. So the last step, right?
Okay, last thoughts.
Right.
Last thoughts, guys. Go ahead, Max.
Well, the only thing I think it's a change in the right direction. I'm a little concerned about what it's going to do to the economy, but they definitely can tweak some of those areas. But let's just wait and see. The Rogue University is uniquely positioned to take good advantage of the situation. So if you guys need new bros or anybody looking for new alliance to join, you should probably look up the Rogue University.
I was going to say, you're not recruiting, are you?
Yeah, I'm totally recruiting. It's going to be a great time to be there.
All right. Let you get away with it this time. AstrosCon?
Yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic. I'm thinking that these changes won't damage the economy too much, and I'm just hoping that CCP, with their promise that they made, actually do release the update in a fashion that isn't similar to, Roku's or anything. And as long as they do that and it's balanced and it's smart, I'm positive that whatever changes comes in the future is good.
All right, Nick?
Well, as with all Eve players, something dramatic like this comes out and we're going to spin out of control for a day or two. But Eve players are ridiculously resilient and will figure out how to make this work. They may not like it, but by God, we're going to work with it.
All right, great. My last thought on this is when I thought of this and I saw what unfolded today, it reminded me of a time where I was in Berkeley and there was a giant group, and I mean like 50, 100 pigeons all in the ground, and somebody threw a pizza slice and it hit the ground and scared all the birds and they flapped all over the place. And then they realized the opportunity and they all converged on it and ate that thing like crazy. I mean, it was unbelievable how much they gobbled it up. Cheese flying all over the place. And so maybe that's what we're looking at here. New opportunities once you realize how things are going to unfold. Although it scares you at first. All right. Well, that's everything we have today. Oh, actually, a couple more things.
Do you want a small prediction?
Okay, let's have a prediction. Then let's go a couple pieces of news and then we're out. Go ahead.
The ESS thing is most likely going to be announced very soon. And it should actually, if I'm not mistaken, going to be on the next big patch. So not the one we're getting now, but the one after that. So that'll be 1 month, maybe 6 weeks out. That's how fast I think that's going to come. And I think we're going to get an announcement of some planned Orca and Roku changes before that. So a month or so out.
Optimistic. Oh, by the way, these changes are already on CC, aren't they?
Yeah, these changes are already on CC. So they're most likely going to, well, they will come in the next patch. So I'm talking about the one where I think the cores are going to get activated. That's going to be when we might see something like the ESS being announced. I don't know if it's going to launch. Yes, but these are the two next logical steps. If you read the original thing, which talks about cheating and RMT and botting and all that stuff, and they announced, or they talked about today, how they've really ramped up the capabilities of their detection tools, which we did have a bit of an announcement about earlier when they were working on the new tool. So botting, RMTing, massive over-ISK printing, all of these things are going to be addressed. And earlier today, we had Kenneth Feld kind of smugging a little bit because on the CSM has already been introduced to these changes. So ESS, Orca, and Roku changes is going to be my prediction. Watch this space.
Okay, a couple more bits of news. We've had some no bounties in Ignoiton since Villy said that he wanted to basically, what's a nice way of saying it? Put bounties on anyone who went missioning there, and so that actually hasn't happened. So maybe his Keepstar there isn't in as much trouble as we thought it might be. Ignoiton is being attacked by Triglavians at the moment, and he has an interest in keeping the balance between the two powers level until it wears off. So we'll see what happens there. We'll continue to update it. Could be an interesting situation, but right now, no activity. And Mannix, you know of a fight that happened in Aquarius?
Yes, there was a fight over Tatara. final timer. Looks like it was Pappy forces. They had 2 fleets there versus a Imperium Ferox fleet. The Tatara did die, and I can't remember the name of the system off the top of my head. I think Nick knows the system name.
I have it
I
right here.
believe that was YF TAC 6L1.
Correct.
Yes, there you go.
Terrific. Okay, so thanks everybody for watching today. We're going to now raid our buddies over at Open Comms. Is it 2 N's?
2 M's? Yes.
Here we go. That says EVE Online. Yeah, okay. There you go. All right, so we're going to send you over there. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next week on Talking in Stations.